Have you ever heard of a presentation maven, Scottish storyteller, and career business mentor all rolled up in one person? You will have if you stay tuned.
Welcome to The Better Part, a program that encompasses a diverse spectrum of topics important to our community, which we hope will both inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy the program.
After a 20-year career in human resources, Danni Burton decided to become a motivational trainer and mentor for marketing and management professionals, as well as small businesses. In addition to all this, she is also a Scottish storyteller. Welcome, Danni.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
First, tell us about your background.
I think the Scottish storytelling began for me with my family. My grandmothers, both Scottish, had wonderful ways of teaching through stories. So one of my favorites, though, was having the big box of photos that came out. And Grandma would tell the story that went with the photo until I got to be about 10 or 11 and realized the same photos came out with a different story. So I wondered about that, and she said, well, you know, there is more than one way to look at things. And that prompted me to think about stories as part of our life experience. And then when I got into being an interviewer and doing recruiting, it's all about the ability to help people tell their story in a way that enhances their ability to communicate and to make contact with other people.
Tell me, how did you become so interested in communications and presentation skills?
Well, believe it or not, when I was very young, I was very shy. And all the way through school, I was very shy. But I was very fascinated by how good communicators manage to put people at ease. So this led me to my first studies, which were in communications. And then I found my way to neurolinguistics programming and studied there on all kinds of information that helped me understand the distinctions, the way people will let you know what's important to them, how they communicate, how they make sense of their world. And so with people, then communications becomes a loop rather than a one-way directive.
So what motivated you to leave the world of human resources and start your own business?
It was time. It was time. I felt like I had learned a lot, and I supported a lot of people and been supported very much along the way. And I just felt the entrepreneurial spirit finally kicked in, and it was time to do my own thing.
That's wonderful, because this is the land of entrepreneurs, isn't it?
Definitely, yes, absolutely.
So what prompted you to become such an advocate and supporter of small businesses?
I think that was because I realized as a small business owner myself, I kept watching other people, and we all share the same challenges. How to build a business, how to keep it positive, how to keep it successful. But more importantly, there's a certain level of isolation that it can occur for small businesses because they often work alone, or they have a team but not necessarily with the team all the time. Or they may, in fact, have a lot of people that subcontract with them. So I said, what would be a good idea to support them in feeling that there's a network of some kind? This was long before we had networking as we know it now, by the way. So it was like, let's come together and let's brainstorm and let's have ideas. And because I'm also a great lover of the entrepreneurial spirit.
I've read that the fear of public speaking is second only to the fear of death. Why do people have such a fear of public speaking?
I like to see it a different way and suggest that people have concerns. Usually when they're fearful, they're worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. And it usually typically is, how will they receive me? Will I look stupid? You know, what if I forget what I was going to say? What if they don't like me? I mean, those are all things that are, you know, internal dialogue that someone is having with themselves.
So it's the anticipation.
It's the anticipation, and so there's a little bit of that for all of us, even people who are professionals. If you watch people on TV being interviewed who are famous, they often, have the same. They will admit sometimes that they were afraid to come on a show or afraid to do something because they're not in a role. They're for real. And so a lot of this is people's ability to be just authentic and be themselves.
So how do you go about coaching someone who's anxious and nervous about giving a speech? Give us some tips for overcoming this fear.
The first thing I like to suggest to people is, for what purpose are you doing this? Why are you making a speech? Why are you doing this? Because there's an outcome that they're after. And so rather than focusing on the speech or the fear, we focus on what is the outcome. So what is this going to have for you, or what are you going to learn or know when you've accomplished this? And I also like to say to people, look at all the things that you have overcome in your life that you're afraid of. Remember the first day of school, learning to ride a bike, then when you learned to drive a car, or you had your first date, or you got yourself into college and you thought, oh my God, how am I ever going to fit in? Or the fear of your first job. So we've overcome a lot of things in our lives that were maybe somewhat concerning, but probably fearful in many ways. And so each time we overcome it was because we did it. We just went ahead and did it, and we practiced. Nobody rides a bike perfectly the first time. Mm-hmm. But once you get up on the bike and you practice, then it becomes almost, second nature. Or the metaphor I like to use with people is, when you're driving your car today, you will leave here and go home in a driver's fog. Basically, you will be in a trance. You won't stop to say, is it close to the corner? Should I stop now? Should I wait? Should I put on the gears? Should I not do the gears? You will just do it automatically because you have become so at one with that it's second nature. And I like to suggest to people that it can become second nature, even to do improv, that whatever you have to say becomes a very practiced and comfortable, confident place to be.
So what are some of the key elements of a successful presentation?
I think that one of the first elements of presentation, again, is back to for what purpose is the presentation? Who is my audience? What do I know of my audience? What might they want or like? They're there because they're interested in, how can I have this be valuable for me? So rather than suggesting that the speaker talks on and on about themselves, which we all know sometimes we hear that, it's more putting the information in a way that relates to the audience very quickly. So getting people engaged in some way, perhaps by raising their hands or nodding their heads or saying yes, or asking questions. I also like to suggest to people that the more prepared we are, that's good, as long as we have flexibility that things can change and come up. And you can have interruptions and things happen. It's just about having kind of a running meter, but not necessarily having it so rigid that, oh my gosh, somebody interrupted me, what do I do? I also like to suggest to people, and when I work with them, how we build an internal anchor for them, a place of confidence within themselves. Often that can be related to a memory of a time when they felt really comfortable and confident in doing something. And also goes back to one of my mother's favorite expressions. And I heard it again when I was in my advanced language training. Anyone who can learn anything, anyone else can learn it as well.
Good thing to remember. So you're also telling us that we need to know our audience.
I think your audience is very important. And of course, making your audience more important than you. And that is, in my work, that's called second position, which means when I'm thinking about me and I'm all about me, I'm in first position. But when I'm thinking about you, what you'd like, what's important to you, that's kind of referring to second position. So that I'm making you more of my focus than about worrying about how am I doing. Because the more authentic I am in being there for you, the more you will be available to respond.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, the French word rapporteur is where we get rapport.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the definitions, and there are many of rapporteur, they actually, one of them is the loop. And the French say that it's to loop it out and bring it back, so that when we have rapport, it's a continuum with people. It's a loop. So you and I, and we are often ending up nodding, just like we are now, nodding in unison,
Right.
because we are in rapport. It's a lot of people think rapport is just sending out the message, but it's not. It's actually the looping of people having a conversation and a connection with each other.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people tell me, I know I have a lot of conversations, but I don't always feel connected.
Mm.
So it's about
Right.
how do we feel connected,
Connected, yeah.
and how do people feel connected with us as
Mhm,
well.
mhm. Now, you started something called the Speak Easy Club.
I did.
Tell me about that.
Back in Santa Clara, many years back, when I first started my business, I started something called the Speak Easy Club, which was basically a group of people who came together. Most of us were in some area of management or training or staff development or whatever, and we just formed this thought of, let's just practice, and let's get up and practice. Then I started bringing in guest speakers. I had people that were comedians. I had people come who were in the media. I had people come who were writers, and the agreement was, when the speaker came, that we'd all have an opportunity, with the blessing, of course, of the speaker, to assess their presentation and to learn from it. And so it was great fun. We had TV people, we had radio people, we had writers, and I only had to stop it because I got so busy traveling with my business that it was important to just put it on I was putting it on a little hold, but the little hold lasted 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I resurrected this in a different format last year.
You did. So are you having regular meetings now?
We have had several. Actually, we do it as a one-day or an evening sessions, where people come in and they introduce what they want to learn and what they want to accomplish, and we practice, and we offer up loving rapport. We offer up a very loving and rapport-built evaluation. We don't not fault find. We don't criticize. That's really not helpful. So I actually teach people how to offer acknowledgement. And the Speakeasy has been, again, put a little bit to the side, where I'm now doing something called small business showcases. So people have the opportunity, as small business owners or reps, to come together, be videotaped in the beginning, have a chance to receive evaluations and thoughts from other people, and offer those as well, because we always learn from others. And then we do a little improv.
Oh, you do?
And we have a seminar. Yeah. So it's a very full day, a lot of fun.
Now, what kind of improv do you do?
Sometimes we have, I will give them something as a challenge, like something from a list I have of very funny things from books of Live Life and Learn, and books like that. Or I might offer them something and say, teach us the value of doing something, or why would it be important to something. And they're funny things that are on the list, like never go up the ladder with only one nail, or never sharpen your boomerang, or let someone else in traffic ahead of you. It's good for them and it's good for you, or whatever it is. So sometimes they just get to do an improv on that. Sometimes I'll make up something that's not even a word and challenge them to take the word and make it something, and then convince us all to either buy it, use it, sit on it, wash our hair with it, or go on a vacation with them.
Sounds like it's a fun and supportive group.
It's great fun. It's great fun.
So-
and a big learning too.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But there's other, organizations probably somewhat similar, like the Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
How is the Speakeasy Club different than, let's say, the Toastmasters group?
Well, I would like to answer that with a metaphor. If you ask anyone, do you have more than one pair of shoes? They'd probably say yes. And do you have more than 5 pairs of shoes? They'd probably say yes. So most of us have a variety of shoes in our closet. However, what we normally do, we tend to favor maybe one pair or two. And so I like to suggest to people that when we get comfortable into any group, it's like the shoes, it's comfortable, until we decide they're not comfortable and it's time to wear another pair of shoes. So I like to suggest to people that any and all possibilities to enhance your skills, to learn new things, to practice, to become comfortable and confident, is all wearing all your shoes. Don't have just one pair of shoes. And I'm familiar with Toastmasters because when I was in corporate America, I actually was a founding president for one of the Toastmasters chapters many years ago. Mm-hmm. And when I left there, it was to go into speaking professionally. So, and I still have great respect for all groups that offer a place for people to come and enhance their skills. As a matter of fact, I will be doing a presentation on using questions in storytelling for a group of Toastmaster folk coming up.
So how is it basically different than the Speakeasy Club?
Speakeasy is a little bit less formal. Mm. It has a structure, to be sure, but we have a lot more of the playfulness involved, perhaps. Toastmasters does, have the rules of procedure, and they have a certain way in which they offer up feedback.
And also, besides the Speakeasy group, you're also involved with a group called the Mastermind Group.
Oh,
Tell
yes.
us about this group.
When I was a very young woman, and I was doing a lot of commuting to work, I had a lot of time sitting on, vehicles getting me to work because I wasn't driving then. I'd read. I was an avid reader. And of course, that is a great way to, pick up a book and entertain yourself while you're going from one place to another. Mm-hmm. I got introduced to the Napoleon Hill work when I was quite young, and I was enchanted. But also along with that, Catherine Ponder and several other great writers of the time, talking about wealth, thinking in terms of wealth, but not necessarily just money. And the principles, which are far-reaching, talk about living your life in a place of integrity and purpose. And I mean, it's even having a resurgence of interest now today. So I started mastermind groups quite a few years back. And my research, through my colleagues and my own research, has told me that the mastermind groups originally, I'm pretty confident, were very small groups of people, very dedicated to their outcomes, working together as a team. So it wasn't a big group gathering over lunch for 15 people or half an hour, whatever. It was much more confined and much more focused, if you would. So what I do is invite people who are ready to, here's another metaphor for you, instead of talking about wanting to ride a horse, they actually go and visit a stable and meet a horse and eventually put on the saddle, and then they ride the horse. So it's like, okay, you have something you want to change it, learn it, accomplish it, whatever that might be. So how would it work for you to get together with 4 to 6 other like-minded people mm-hmm. and all support each other to achieve your outcomes while all the time you're learning and having great fun?
That's so important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not for, I tell them it's not for the faint of heart.
Ah.
You got to be really seriously ready.
So what are some of the basic principles of the group?
Well, there's a lot that has been said in all the books. One of the things he says in Think and Grow Rich, which I was very fond of, especially appropriate to what's going on in our world today, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it says something to the effect of, give up your insistence upon getting something for nothing, and to have a focus for what you do, and have a purpose, and be willing to be diligent in your doing so. In other words, you don't give up. If you have to make route changes, that's fair enough. He talks a lot about integrity and about, being supportive to other people, of course. But the other one that I liked was about investment versus in spending. And again, I'm paraphrasing. And what I like to suggest to the people I work with is, I know you're the person that is timely for this. If you stop talking about spending money and you talk about investing in yourself, because that's the best place to invest, is back in yourself. And I'm worth it. You have to say, I'm worth it. Whatever it is, I'm worth it.
So Napoleon Hill didn't start the mastermind groups, did he?
No, Napoleon Hill wrote the book, Think and Grow Rich. 1937 it was first published.
Oh, a long time ago.
Very long time, before my time.
Right.
And he said, though, he was quoted as saying that everyone he interviewed over that period of time had shared with him that they were in a mastermind group or had been a part of a mastermind group. And so they gave a great deal of credit to their success from having had that wonderful opportunity. None of us is going to know everything about everything.
Right.
And you're one mind, and I think the principle is one mind put together with a set of other minds makes for a bigger.
So what do you think is Napoleon Hill's major contributions to the mastermind groups?
I don't know so much that it's his contribution to the groups as much as his contribution for bringing it out in a book form, to the public, that mastermind groups are so phenomenal and so wonderful, and to give examples of what is accomplished with the principles. And they have a foundation today, of course, and people are still studying, these principles. We work with them in my mastermind groups. We work with those principles. We also work with a lot of other wonderful sources. A lot of people today are familiar with the book Think and Grow Rich because it's been republished so many times.
So it was a bestseller.
Oh, big time, yes. And he was a very prolific writer, and some of his writing is daunting reading. I mean, it's
What do you mean daunting?
daunting. It's, you got to be willing to, it's very intense. It's very, very dense, and it's wonderful. But you got to do it, when you're willing to take it in increments and think about it, because it's daunting. I mean, it's a lot of his writing. However, he was a major gift to us, as were so many of the others. In that same time period, there were some women who became famous for their writing. Catherine Ponder being one of them, and Florence Scovel Shinn was another, who wrote a fascinating book called The Game of Life and How to Play It. And what an amazing title.
Yes, it is.
I like it. I like to use it, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And so I think by letting us know what the principles were, how to apply those to our lives, regardless of what age we are or where we are in the process. But the thing that fascinated me the most about this was when he spoke about wealth. This is what I get from it. This is me appreciating this from my point of view. He doesn't speak just about the wealth in terms of money. He speaks about your wealth of your compassion, of your you're having relationships, the work that you do in the world, the wealth of, feeling good feelings of goodwill, and making a difference in the world. It's all
So
about
much
making
broader
a difference. Oh,
definition of wealth.
it is indeed, yes.
Now, my understanding is that the fundamental functions of a mastermind group would be networking, brainstorming, and problem solving. So what differentiates this group with others that are involved with these same functions?
That's a great question, Grace. I kind of think I'd like to take the networking piece out for just a minute and focus in on the brainstorming and problem solving. I think the people who come into mastermind groups have such a committed outcome of some kind. There's something they really are committed to, and it's powerful for them, that they're willing to turn and say, everybody's resource is welcome, everybody's ideas are welcome. Let's problem solve, but rather than calling it a problem, let's take the challenges and work it together as a group. And because, as my grandmother would say, one mind is good, two minds are better.
That's right.
And so you might have a different way of looking at something than I do, and that gives me a different perspective. Or someone might say, well, I'm going to challenge you on that, because what about this over here? And then you go, oh, okay, so I need to enhance that or change that a little bit. I think that networking is a little different. It's more what's going on in the world today. It's a movement all over the world, by the way, networking. And I think this is more about commitment to something that's bigger than yourself, and willingness to work with other people in a way that you all share, you all support each other, and that you all applaud one another. And we don't always get applauded when we're networking.
That's true. Absolutely true. Now, one last question. Who has inspired you throughout the years?
What up? Who hasn't? I think the first inspirations were my family. I realized when I got old enough to really understand this, that my family had been very inspirational in many ways, because they all had these funny little one-liners and stories and things that, you know, stayed with me. I was very inspired by my high school history and English teachers, who encouraged me, and in college, all of my work that I got to do about communications, the people that were there. Napoleon Hill, of course, has inspired me. Maya Angelou, many people who have been, I've been gifted to not meet them, to read them, to study them, to know them. But I'm mostly inspired by others who are sharing my love of doing good work in the world, making a difference, and who come and share with me through my work, or come and walk through my life, and everyone leaves a footprint.
Well, Danni, thank you so much for being with us today. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I've enjoyed it too, Grace. Thanks.
Thank you for being with us today. See you again next week on The Better Part.